my microphone's working. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me this morning. I'm really interested in finding out more about these projects today, but I'm afraid I have to earn my keep first, so I'll try and do that in the next half an hour. My remit this morning is to set the context, really, for all the hard work that's been going on these projects, and to really give an overview about the importance of business and community engagement. Now, I'm really conscious that in the title of this session that I was asked to speak to, there's a sort of implicit assumption that business and community engagement is important. I guess you wouldn't all be sitting here if you didn't think it was, because you've come to find out how other people may have developed things that you could use to enhance your collaboration and perhaps make it work more effectively in your business and community engagement. But I do hope that as I go through this overview, we might see a little bit about how it might be important, and not just because groups of people in the institutions who've worked so hard on this actually got funding for a project out of the Business and Community Engagement Programme. So what I'd like to do is just start with reminding you all what the Jisc definition of business and community engagement is. I'm not going to read it out because it's on the screen, and I'm sure you will have seen it previously. But I do have to say that in the early days of the Jisc starting the BCE programme, a lot of time was spent trying to define what business and community engagement was. Now, at that stage, that seemed to be really important, but I think my take on this is that as time has gone on, perhaps that is less important, because what we're seeing is a lot of initiatives and innovation in education that is actually taking that agenda forward. But if you look at the objective here on the screen, it's very ambitious. Benefits to the economy and society, resulting in more highly skilled workforce, more efficient, dynamic and sustainable economy, and a more cohesive, knowledge-enabled society. Sounds a little bit trying to put the world right, but it is an ambitious agenda. What I'm really pleased about, though, with the BCE programme that the Jisc is taking forward, and it's been running for, I think, just coming up to 3 years now, that it started off very much as a very exploratory, divergent programme, as I say, trying to define what BCE was, and really to find out what might be sensible activities for the Jisc to invest in. We've moved on a long way from that, and key priorities have really become very transparent out of that early work, and are moving forward into the sorts of projects that you're going to find out about today with real tangible deliverables. And that's really what today is about, is focusing on those deliverables that will help the collaborative effort to achieve this objective, which is really very ambitious. So what I'd like to look at in the next 20 to 30 minutes or so is a number of dimensions here. I'd like to look at economic growth. I'd like to look at the wider issues of shaping society. But I'd also like to look at how that impacts on our business, education, and the future of our business, and a little bit about how it impacts on us as individuals and our personal well-being. Now, I have used a number of quotations as we go through this, and there's one here from the recent David Willett's speech to UK. And I just really want to say up front that a lot of these quotations use the word universities, but clearly we're talking here about a wider agenda about furthering higher education and the contribution of education. So please bear with me in the use of the word universities. I think the other point that I'd really like to make, and I think that comes out quite strongly here, is that engagement is two-way. This isn't about education doing things to other organisations or other people. This is about collaboration and two-way engagement, and that permeates, I think, all of the BCE activities. So what I'd like to do is just start with a few observations about government policy. We've had an election last May. We've got a coalition government. But what can be seen is a real common thread running through from the previous Labour government into the new coalition government. I think you'll all be familiar with some of the much earlier reports, the Sainsbury review about the enterprise economy, about the Leach report on skills for UK workforce, and so on. The Innovation Nation White Paper in 2008. And then if you look at the BIS website now, you'll find these statements there. There's a real common thread going forward. I think what I would say is it's very much with renewed vigour because of the so-called economic austerity that this country, and perhaps other countries, are facing. So we have the Technology Strategy Board continuing. And I'm grateful to a colleague for advising me about the Technology Strategy Board launching a new portal that is drawing together in quite promising initial activities the work of 15 different knowledge transfer networks. We've had recent reports, the Hauser report on technology and innovation centres, which is about a much bigger agenda for shared services and collaboration in addressing business and community engagement. We've had the Dyson report on Ingenious Britain, which backs up that premise, and more recently the Strategy for Sustainable Growth in July, which is available on this website. So I think we've got a real driver here, and it is government policy which is in the position to actually incentivise and change regulations, and if it's available, funding to stimulate BCE. So, what about economic growth? I've picked out 5 dimensions here: relationships, skilled workforce, talent stream, knowledge exchange, enterprise and innovation. And I'd just like to explore a little bit about each of those. I have to say they're not in a particular order on this screen because they all interlock and support each other. But you'll notice as I go through this that the same key words keep cropping up in quotations from government and other bodies. And here we have skills, science, research and innovation, essential investments in the UK economy, because it is a focus on developing that economy with new products and services. And it is about the place of UK PLC in a global marketplace. So let's have a look at knowledge exchange first. Some of you may be involved in activities around knowledge transfer partnerships, KTPs, research and consultancy in collaboration with business, with other public sector bodies, with SMEs, with all sorts of organisations, and so on. KTPs were an early form of incentivisation for BCE. They've been running for a number of years now. I think the observation I would make about KTPs is that they have really now become very productive, but there's a lead time. And I think if you look at the early years of KTPs, there was an awful lot of settling down and finding out how they might best work going on. And now we're in a position where they are being very productive and they can be taken forward and invested in further. So we have to be prepared to assess what the lead time is, I think, on the effectiveness of some of our activities and engagements. That, of course, is about providing support for good ideas, about taking good ideas and translating them into good business. It's about knowledge creation in education perhaps, or supported by education and research, and translating those into practical deliverables. The benefit to education perhaps is that we can take those research, that new knowledge, those findings, and take them a step further. I'm not suggesting that other organisations might just be our test bed, because test beds can fail. But actually it is an opportunity for practical application of what has actually been developed in what is really part of our core business of creating new knowledge and new activities. Perhaps not a direct analogy, but I was recently in the British Museum at the History of Printing in China exhibition, and I was staggered to find that the first printed document dated from the 9th century. And the reason that the Chinese had printing was because they wanted to disseminate more widely the knowledge and the teachings, in this case Buddhism, across to other communities. If you think about it, printing in the Western world was with Gutenberg, was in the 15th century. 600 years difference. And then, when printing started in this country, there were all sorts of legislative barriers put in place. Initially, it wasn't allowed to be done outside of London. So I think we need to learn a lesson from that, and this is all about dissemination, knowledge transfer, not sitting on what we have and protecting it, but actually making sure that we disseminate to the wider world and best use is made of our knowledge. I mentioned the Technology Innovation Centres earlier, really just to note that the proposal here, although it's not agreed at the moment, is really for shared centres, shared services, not just between educational organisations, but with other partners and other organisations as well, to help incentivise and drive forward this sharing and dissemination of knowledge. Now, I have called it knowledge exchange because it is two-way, and this isn't just about education delivering its outputs to other people. It is about us learning from other organisations, and I'll come back to that in a little while. I think the other point that I might make in terms of the potential benefit for us is that if we can actually use our knowledge and our developments to help other organisations to become more efficient, more productive, maybe there's more cash in hand that they could invest in other things, such as skilling the workforce, that might create more business for us as well. What about the talent stream? Graduate employment is not a good market at the moment. There's a big agenda here for BCE in terms of supporting our graduates into employment. One of the biggest difficulties, I think, is not so much the large organisations who perhaps recognise already the value of graduate skills to their businesses, but the enormous SME markets, small and medium-sized enterprises, who are perhaps living in a more hand-to-mouth existence, and where perhaps the value of graduate skills to their future business growth isn't quite as transparent as it is for other organisations. How can we actually develop and work with that SME agenda to provide opportunities for them, but also opportunities for our graduates and our qualified students coming out and going into the workplace?